Hello and welcome to NIFA's Webinar Wednesdays, a weekly virtual series specifically designed for Nebraska communities and housing partners. My name is John Turner, Manager of Community Development and Research at the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. Also joining me today from NIFA is Robin Ambrose, Deputy Director of Programs and Marketing. And in the background, we have Susan Pullis also with NIFA, and she is helping to monitor the chat and answer questions. I'd like to make a couple of announcements before we get started. Due to the pandemic, NIFA is postponing its 2021 Annual Housing Innovation Marketplace Conference until March 28th through 30th of 2022. NIFA is offering 2 virtual trainings in March. Lender workshops are March 9th and 10th, and our annual Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC, compliance training is on March 15th through 17th. You can register for these online trainings by going to our website at nifa.org. So thank you for attending today's webinar on the Nebraska Emergency Rental Assistance and what we know right now. Today is more of a discussion, and we have invited Jeff Chambers from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Center on Children, Families, and the Law, and Randy McCoy, the Executive Director from the Metro Area Continuum of Care for the Homeless. We wanted to make sure that we reflected the entire state during our discussion today. We do want all attendees to save all questions until the end of the presentations. You can use the question feature on the right to input your question, and Susan will hold those until the end of the presentation. If you would prefer to ask your question, you can simply raise your hand and we will unmute you. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started. I'm going to kick it over to Robin as we get through our PowerPoint. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. I'm Robin Ambrose with NIFA. I'm going to just start off by talking a little bit about how the Emergency Rental Assistance Program has come to be. In the latest coronavirus relief bill that was passed by Congress on December 21st of last year, it included additional funding for COVID relief, which included $25 billion for rental assistance out of the $900 billion in total relief funds. So what does that mean for Nebraska? As you can see, Nebraska has received $200 million total for emergency rental assistance, and you can see the breakdown on this slide. Both Douglas and Lancaster County have received funding, as well as the City of Lincoln and the City of Omaha. And a little bit later, we'll talk with Jeff, who will be overseeing Lincoln and Lancaster County, and then Randy, who will be overseeing the City of Omaha funds. So that means for the balance of the state, there is just a little over $158 million in emergency rental assistance funds. Per the legislation, the 90% of the funds must be used for the eligible types of assistance, which we're going to go into next. So it can be used for past due and future rent payments. Past due payments can go back to March 13th of 2020. And any future payments can go 3 months forward, but you can only do 3 months at a time. Generally, the total amount of funding cannot exceed 12 months. However, it does allow for an additional 3 months to get to a total of 15 months in order to ensure housing stability for a household. And payments are to be made directly to the landlord. In most instances, that is the ideal situation. It can also be used for utility payments, and you can see the utilities that are included listed there, and it can go back to March 13th of 2020 as well. These are only for utilities that are not included in the household's rent, and it cannot include cable, phone, or internet, unfortunately. Again, the payments will be made directly to the utility provider. And then who can apply for these funds? Who is eligible? It must be a renter household who is at or below 80% of the area median income. And then one or more individuals in the household must have qualified for unemployment benefits or has experienced a reduction in their income or other financial hardship due to the pandemic. And the household also has to demonstrate a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And the way that can be done is a past due utility notice or a past due rent notice, or it could even be an eviction notice. And then John, I'll turn it over to you to do the next slide. Oops, John, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes.
That mute button's a tricky thing. So other considerations, must prioritize households with incomes at or below 50% of AMI. And the previous slide, there is a link, and we will share these slides, and you can click and look at the HUD website to look at what those area median incomes are. And households in which one or more household member is unemployed and has been unemployed for 90 days. We must ensure that households receiving rental assistance provided under this program do not also receive funding under any other federally funded rental assistance program. Many of you have probably heard of Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher Program. And that would be a federally funded rental assistance program. One of the nice things about this round of funding is that landlords and owners may apply on behalf of an eligible tenant, so long as the tenant co-signs the application. The landlord provides documentation to the tenant, and the payments are used to satisfy the tenant's rental obligation to the owner. So that is kind of a nice change from the CARES Act money that happened in 2020. So I know the big question is, when is this going to happen? And what we wanted to do today is just get everybody on the same page and make sure you know that this is coming soon. And you know, you just got to keep your eyes open and keep listening in your groups. But an online application will be available soon, and more information is going to be provided. So as we mentioned, Randy and Jeff represent Lincoln and Omaha, and we can hear a little bit from their rollout, but the balance of state is going to have an online application and documents that need to be gathered. So this is the time to start. If you're a case manager, work with the people that you know are struggling and help them have these forms ready. But driver's license, a valid form of ID, proof of income, and there's some examples there: 2020 W-2, pay stubs, unemployment benefits, past due utility bills, eviction notice, court date, lease. So those types of things. And then we are still waiting to hear what any other evidence of housing instability is at this point. We don't have a lot of guidance on that, but we do work with our national organizations, and many of us, and maybe even some folks on the call, are monitoring the Treasury Department to look at those frequently asked questions. But it is important that tenants really need to contact their landlords so they can verify the information in the system to receive payment. I mean, it's a good opportunity for tenants and landlords to work together to solve the problem. Do we want to talk about, maybe Randy, do you want to talk a little bit about what is happening in Omaha? And then we'll kick it over to Jeff.
Yeah, sure. So in Omaha, Match has been convening a group of providers across Douglas and Sarpy counties since April of last year. Primarily, it's called our Housing Problem Solving Program, but it is the way that we've been dispersing private foundation funds, but also CARES Act funds. Individuals who are behind on rent, utilities, mortgages, in some cases can apply at a variety of different agencies in person. There's about 20 or 25 that we work with, and there's also an online portal, and I think it's listed a little further on in this PowerPoint, but they can do it online as well. We believe that these new Treasury funds will go through kind of the same process, so there can be applications made in person at one of the partnering agencies or through the online portal. Like John was talking about a minute ago, we're still waiting on additional guidance to make sure that we get all the requirements in place and all the things that we're going to have to collect from individuals. We do have some rental assistance and mortgage assistance currently, although it is very limited. And at this point in time, it requires either an eviction notice or an eviction court date, or some kind of a notice to quit or vacate the property to qualify for it. So you couldn't just be behind like your February rent and receive funds now. But as soon as these funds are in place, we will kind of loosen up some of those restrictions and criteria. But it will be a little while. My guess is probably middle of March at the absolute soonest. But that's kind of guessing at this point.
You want me to go?
Jeff, if you want to
Okay.
jump in? Sure.
Sure. Yeah, so for Lincoln and Lancaster County, the ERA funds are administered through the city of Lincoln and Lancaster County. And both the city and Lancaster County have elected to continue the current process that was used for COVID-related assistance funds through the Lincoln Prevention Assistance Common Fund. And that's a partnership between the city, the county, Lincoln Community Foundation, and then Nebraska Children and Families Foundation will be joining the LPAC as a common fund holder as well, specific for the ERA funds. So there will be an online application or an intake process for individuals to enter their information in, and there will also be continuing the LPAC process that's been stood up in Lincoln. Additional staff at public doors in the city and the county to specifically dedicated for ERA intake assistance. And we will be using the coordinated entry system to funnel all those requests to the common funder. And we anticipate that it will be coming soon, but the city and the county have not yet identified a date certain for when they will roll that out. So continue to, if you're in Lincoln and Lancaster County, continue to stay in touch with the Lincoln Homeless Coalition, the Lincoln Continuum of Care. NIFA, I'm sure, will announce it as well on their website, the city website for COVID information, as well as Lancaster County. I think that's just a really high overview. I did want to point out that Lincoln currently still has some limited assistance that the city has elected to, because we know these funds are coming, to prioritize for mortgage assistance, because these ERA funds are not available for mortgage assistance. So that's a real difference between these and previous funds that were available for this. And then there's still rental assistance available through the Lincoln Prevention Assistance Common Fund and the regular process. It's just not these ERA Treasury funds. So I think that's update for there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
And I guess we should mention too that the state of Nebraska will be handling the balance of state and have selected a third party to stand up the online portal and then also a call center. And NIFA is just assisting in any way that we can and are helping to get the word out there. And we'll probably be doing more webinars and education in the future just to help everyone understand what needs to be done once we learn more. So, and then I guess we should mention the things that we want to leave everyone with, right? The 3 L's. John, did you want to do this one?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as Robin said, NIFA is working to market and provide outreach to get the word out. And we thought, we've heard about Throughout the pandemic, we hear about the 3 C's that the governor talks about, you know, and we just thought lease, landlord, and loss of income. Have your lease ready. You know, if you don't have that, get with your landlord to get a copy of it. Contact your landlord, and you know, even if landlords know that this is coming and people know that this is coming, at least you'll be prepared when these applications are available. And then documentation of loss of income. Start thinking now, where are those 2020 W-2s? You know, if you've got pay stubs online, how do you get those offline? And, you know, one of the nice things about where Nebraska is that so many agencies have been managing funding and working to try to keep people housed over the last year. So a lot of you are already well prepared for this. And, you know, Randy and Jeff are great examples of their leadership in Lincoln and Omaha and how they've worked with their continuums to provide these resources. So I think, you know, those folks are really in a good place to get started with this. So yeah, remember your 3 L's. And what do we have next? I know there's some questions coming in.
This last slide just gives you some websites that you can check for updates, but of course, as we mentioned, we'll be pushing information out as soon as we have it as well. But coronavirus.nebraska.gov already has a lot of good information on it about the programs that are out there, and this will be added once it's available. And then of course our website, and then we also have Randy's website up there for Match. So, and then this, Jeff, once you guys have yours available, we'll be sure to get that out as well.
Yes, thanks. And in the meantime, just keep checking the City of Lincoln website for their COVID response.
Okay, well, a lot of questions, don't we?
Questions?
Yes, and I was actually, since you're on the panel, going to offer up the questions for you so you could all participate if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
There were a lot of questions on the document slide that you posted, just I think it's 2 or 3 back. The primary one being, do all of the documents listed on that slide need to be gathered for an application to be eligible? And with the ongoing eviction moratorium, does the tenant still need to provide an eviction notice?
Good questions. So I think that any of those that would be, so of course, driver's license and proof of income definitely would need to be provided. If they do have unemployment benefits, some may not. Some may just have a reduction in hours that they could show from pay stubs. And then any past due utility bills, yes, that would be needed if they were requesting assistance with those. And then if they were requesting assistance with rent, you know, if they have any past due notices from their landlord, or if there was an eviction notice, we would still, even though there's the moratorium, I think what we're hearing, and I think what everybody's hearing, is evictions are still happening. So we would definitely want them to provide that if they had it. Of course, a copy of the current lease to show, you know, that they do indeed live in that unit and what the current rent is. And then as we mentioned, we don't, the legislation says evidence of other housing instability, but Treasury has not provided guidance as to what other things that could be. But we know that, you know, maybe we haven't thought of everything. So, and they may provide more guidance on that in the future. So.
You also think that a landlord ledger that shows all the months behind would suffice?
Well, that leads us to the next question, which is, how formal does a current lease need to be? Can it be a handwritten lease, backdated? And what if it doesn't have that person's name on the household because someone else had lived there and just recently left? What kind of documents are you requiring for that?
Those are good questions. You know, I don't want to, Jeff, like, do you know how you've dealt with that kind of stuff with the CARES funding? With I mean, we need your your staff on here. I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I may be getting out too far over my skis on this one, but I think it needs to be a current lease with the leaseholder identified that is currently in the unit. I think I'm fairly safe at saying that.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And one of the things that has come up nationally on different calls has been self-certification, and I don't think Treasury is providing any guidance on any kind of self-certification of income or anything like that. But I know there's advocates pushing for it nationally.
One of the other questions that we have is how do the people that don't have unemployment qualifications because they're house cleaners, caregivers, musicians, other kind of work, non-traditional work, how do they qualify when they don't have unemployment benefits, don't have W-2s, and how do we reach those populations? Any idea?
I wonder if that's going to fall under self-certifications. You know, it's interesting. A musician reached out to me like right after the moratorium ended in 2020, and I was able to point him in the direction of a provider in Nebraska, and he was able to get some help. So that is a good question. And
this may be under some. I think it's more information will be forthcoming, but certainly under CARES, we were able to do self-attestations of no income or income. So hopefully that will be the case again. Because that did happen quite frequently with the CARES Act, which were Treasury dollars.
And that, like I said, there are a lot of national groups that are pushing for that. So hopefully they'll be successful.
What constitutes any other evidence of housing instability?
We talked about that right before we started today. You know, has anybody heard any more about that? And you know, it's a great question. And I mean, all these questions are great. And that's why we're going to need to do more of these trainings and webinars and attend meetings and, you know, get the word out. So that's kind of an answer of saying we don't know yet. Does anyone else want to take anything? We're learning every day, seriously every day, about this program.
We also have a question asking if the residents need to prove that their loss of income was due to the COVID pandemic.
Anybody want to take that one?
Well, in previous iterations of Treasury dollars with CARES response and recovery, that was the self-attestation. You said that was the reason for your loss or change in income. I don't know, Robin or John, if we know that for absolute certainty for these dollars yet or not.
I don't think we know that for sure, but I would anticipate that after providing the documentation, there probably would be some self-certification that goes along with it.
There's a question here wondering, they said they were under the impression that a Section 8 voucher holder did not receive an income adjustment, they would still qualify for this assistance. Do any of you know for certain if that's true?
I think that I think more information about this will be forthcoming too, but I think currently the general understanding is that this could cover the tenant paid portion of the rent.
I can see from our end, that was one of the things that when people would apply for that tenant-based portion, we would make sure that they had applied with their housing authority for the adjustment if they had lost income, become unemployed or whatever, just so that they could, you know, stop that tenant-based portion if they completely lost their job or whatever going forward. But that was, I don't want to say a hard and fast requirement, but definitely a requirement that we were asking people to make sure they had done.
Someone's asking if the maximum amount of, if there is, excuse me, a maximum amount of assistance that an individual can receive.
I think that was, oh, I think I froze up.
I don't think there's a dollar amount restriction, but a number of months of assistance.
And I I will say that it does allow for states or jurisdictions to choose to select a maximum amount that they would serve per household. So I think more information about that would be forthcoming as well.
Wynn Hermstad with the City of Lincoln just offered up some information that I wanted to share, which is that the City of Lincoln driver's license are not required, and they can also be receiving other government assistance, not just from the same source. So I wanted to let you folks know that. And then we have a question about, are there plans in place for the online application to be in other languages? And that goes along with another question we have, which, do you have a marketing plan intact that's going to be able to reach some of those smaller, mom and pop landlords, or the language deficiencies that may occur if we just do it in one language?
Great questions. I know for the balance of state system, yes, they're looking at providing that in other languages. And yes, that is the marketing and outreach plan is one of the things that NIFA will be working on to help get the word out. So we are putting that in place so that we can reach as many people as possible.
Will this rental? Oh, sorry, Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say similar things for Omaha. In our conversations with the city, developing a marketing plan to make sure that we get it out to everyone in the community in targeted households is definitely something that will happen. The Match Connect, up in the top left corner, there's a drop-down menu for languages. It doesn't convert to all languages. I mean, there's a handful, but we have translation services available if we come across something that we don't have on there.
People are wondering if the rental assistant goes directly to the tenants, if the landlords don't participate, can they still actively apply for these funds?
Another great question. At least for the balance of state, I mean, the plan is for it to be paid to the landlord, but there is a process in place that if the landlord's either not responsive or refuses to accept payment, that in those instances there is a way to pay it to the tenant. But ideally it's going directly to the landlords, and landlords are participating. So I don't know about Lincoln and Omaha, if you guys have thought about that. But.
Well, Wynn has stated that they are also in the City of Lincoln working on marketing plans in multiple languages, and that they take evidence or consider evidence of housing instability when people are behind on rents. There is a question about how quickly the funds will need to be spent, and it asks, will the funding cover any other local counties for the balance of state?
Well, I mean, the funding is, the balance of state is anything outside of Lincoln, Lancaster, Douglas, Omaha. There is requirements that the 65% of the funding needs to be spent by the end of September, and the remainder by the end of the year. That's what I know so far.
Do any of you have a best guess for people right now, before the rollout of funds, what the chances of an individual getting assistance would be?
I don't know if I understand that. Before the funds roll out, what the chances of getting assistance?
I think they're saying that right now, as it stands, what do you think the chances of folks getting assistance would be once they're rolled out for any persons that are suffering right now?
Oh, I mean, I think it's going to be really good. I mean, it's a matter of when this comes out, which is very soon. That's why we wanted to do this webinar. But if you have your information and you're behind in rent, I mean, this is the time to be looking for help. So that's, we really want to get this marketed out there. So I'm glad to know that Wynn and other folks are on this call. And I mean, I know a lot of people are talking about it, so we wanted to get this out there as fast as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest part is if if you meet the income limit. And then, yeah, just having the documentation ready so that when you do apply, you can provide all of the information that is needed.
There's a question about how will people make applications if they don't have access to a computer?
That came up in our discussions, and we advocate for case managers, providers throughout the state that work with folks. So hopefully some of those folks are connected. If they're not, then there are resources in your communities that you should be able to reach out to. And what we'd like to do is kind of like we're doing today, but have one of the things we haven't talked about is Douglas County. We still need to kind of work with them to see how they're going to roll out their funding, but all of us communicating together and sharing that same message. Reach out to your providers, whether it's community action agencies, behavioral health providers, or if your landlord, if you're behind in rent, maybe your landlord can apply on your behalf, and then you can help the landlord, use their computer in their office. Any other comments about that, you think, from?
I would just add that there will be a call center for the balance of state that in the event someone is not able to get online, they could call into the call center as well.
Yeah, and in Lincoln and Lancaster County, there'll be both, obviously the online, but then also the LPAC system that's been put in place over the past year will be there with additional staffing.
And libraries provide a great resource for people too. You get to your local public library.
One other thing specific to Lancaster County is actually going to have an outreach staff in the small communities in Lancaster County there and available in person to accept intakes. So they'll be moving around the county, and I don't know exactly where, but those I'm sure will be marketed and advertised.
Well, and Legal Aid is currently on the presentation with us, and they wanted to remind folks that the existence of the CDC eviction moratorium eviction defense goes through March, but is likely to be extended. So just so everyone's aware of that. And if you have any questions, certainly call Legal Aid of Nebraska. They've got a lot of staff willing and ready to help folks. We also have a question about the Lincoln Coordinated Entry Front and the fact that they're taking apps over the phone as well as online, just so folks know and are aware of that too. There's a question about how we deal with citizenship standing for both the tenants and the landlord. What if their W-9 tax documentation or citizen status? Is that coming into play with any of the application or eligibility?
Yeah, at this time, the application process is for people that have are documented citizens, so they'll need documentation like an I-94, verification of that in order to be eligible.
If somebody,
I thought maybe Jeff was going to say something. No.
Well, I was going to say, since Wen's on, she may have some comment on that specifically for Lincoln as well.
Yeah, we might want to unmute Wynn just to give her the ability to chime in when it's specific to Lincoln. One of the other questions we have too is if someone previously received assistance and provided all the required documentation, will they still be eligible for this new funding? And will the application process be similar for those people?
Yeah, I mean, this is a new round of funding. They want to stop evictions. So I would think, the application process might be different because I don't remember an online application for the CARES funding. Am I correct in saying that? I think this is a different process, but it's a new funding source. I think those folks should be eligible for this new round of funding.
Right, as long as they didn't receive rental assistance, for those same months through some other type of funding.
We have a question asking about the online application system and just clarifying that it will or could be different for Lincoln, Omaha, the counties, as well as the balance of states. It's not just one application, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Wynn has again chimed in for us. Thank you, Wynn, and clarified that citizenship is not required if the funds are being administered by a nonprofit. The state requirements may be a little more restrictive, but that's her understanding of what's going on.
I think she might be unmuted.
Wynn, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Can you?
Looks like you have two phones going. Let me. I'm gonna
Okay.
try to.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Whoops.
I'm getting all kinds of feedback here.
Robin, I was going to say, if you look, Wynn is logged in twice, and so she has two microphones, and if we unmute one of them, maybe. Well, shucks. I don't know if this.
Okay, Wynn, try now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My computer, you guys just all turned into Mickey Mouse, and so I got into my another device here.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Wynn, to that question about eligibility?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking with our law department and trying to figure this out. And from what we had interpreted, again, this is for City of Lincoln, is that, and we're falling back somewhat on, not somewhat, we are falling back on CDBG regs, which don't require citizenship if it's administered by a nonprofit. And so the way we've set up our program that we did through the CARES Act funding, and now that we're also doing with the Treasury funding, is we've got a partnership with CCFL and it was Lincoln Community Foundation, and now it will be Nebraska Children and Families Foundation. But because of the nonprofit status of those entities, that we don't have to do immigration status. Now, the state, as we understand it, the state's regulations do require that. So it's, as our law department says, it's just not clear, and the guidance has not been forthcoming. So at least for right now, we are saying that we do not have to verify immigration. So that's what we're doing in Lincoln.
Thank you.
Well, it does not look like I have any additional questions. So if anyone has any final words that they'd like to impart, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Sorry, I'm just pulling up. So I wanted to just thank everybody for attending the webinar today. Here we go. And we do have a sponsor of this webinar. It's the National Equity Fund. So thanks to them. This webinar and other webinars are approved for 1.5 hours of continuing legal education. If you neglected to enter your license number, you can contact us after the webinar at outreach@nifa.org. Don't forget to register for our virtual conferences that I mentioned, the low-income housing tax credit and the lender workshops. And I do apologize, I just remembered that we did not get this one approved for CLEs, continuing legal education, so disregard that comment. We will have those at our upcoming webinars for anyone looking for that. This has been recorded, and this is going to be a great one to go back and watch because there was a lot of good information and great questions. You can go to our website, NIFA.org, and look under Community Development Trainings and Webinars, or our YouTube channel, which is NIFA Housing. I thought I saw another question come in. And next week we have a webinar that will be good for folks like landlords or case managers. You might want to tune in. We do have the world-renowned expert, Dr. Christiana Bratiotis from the University of British Columbia, and she's going to be talking about her book, Hoarding, What Everyone Needs to Know. So we're very excited that she was able to take time out of her busy schedule and present for us next Wednesday.
John?
Yes.
Would you remind them also of our discussion tomorrow on factory-built housing?
Yes, we do have a go-to meeting scheduled, and tomorrow at 10 a.m. I believe, and that is, you may have seen our webinar last year on the manufactured housing, factory-built housing, when we talked about Champion and York and the Fannie Mae product. So we have a call scheduled tomorrow for people to call in and kind of have an open discussion about this and how do we move forward with bringing that product to Nebraska. Any other comments about that that I missed? Yeah, thank you, Susan, for the reminder. It looks like we have a question about who's administering the balanced estate funds, and that is the state of Nebraska, and a software company is developing the online portal. And again, we will have more webinars and videos on this topic. I know we've talked about even doing a webinar where it guides somebody through the application process, so please stay tuned. Randy, Jeff, Robin, any other final comments before we end? Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank everybody for listening and look forward for more information.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.